Hello, everybody. Welcome to day 920 of Eating a Sheet of Paper a Day. I'm your host, and I'm not going to say my name. It would be typical for me to say my name, but I actually have rebranded the channel so it displays my name. In parentheses, my super exclusive occupation, paper eater. That's me. So, you know who this is? I know what this is. And let's eat the first piece instead of talking for 20 minutes, because that's what we did the last 5 times. Oh, shit, and the paper promo. Okay, this is great. Normally I do the paper promo without talking and then just looking at my phone on stream, which is against the rules. No lollygagging. Brian, did I set a car on fire? I have no idea what you're talking about. A car on fire? I don't know where you get these things from, Moses, but thank you. Thank you for assuming that I am capable of doing such bold activities that involve lots of confidence. I would never do that. Ooh, this is a really good paper promo picture for the day. Here. I was gonna do the Hillcrest trash can with a bunch of junk in it, with like the pride sign, with just a giant mountain, a Mount Everest of garbage, but I already posted that. I posted that as its own thing because people do realize that image is very symbolic. So I'm gonna, what day is it? 920. There we go. Beautiful. All right, guys, what do we think about the layout on this? All right, I need votes. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter because by the time I see the votes, I will have posted this already. There we go. Good afternoon. OMG, arson? I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, right. You saying the word arson reminded me of what we were going to talk about today. Normally, I'm doing this in preparation. It's going to be very loose, limber, and I had no graphics, no links, no nothing, no talking points even pulled up. All I had in my head was a subject that's been bugging me for a while, and I want your thoughts on it. It's so funny because my mom's in the kitchen and she has very strong opinions on it, opposing opinions, that is, but everything connected, and this has sparked a whole convo, especially involving a recent Jon Stewart video that got into my algorithm where he talked about how we are concerned about the LA riots and the small businesses that it has destroyed, the lives that have been ruined and or taken. And then Jon Stewart brought up a big long list of shootings, which, by the way, did not happen in gun-friendly states. But I want your thoughts on it because it is such a significant event. This is the George Floyd of 2025. So give your thoughts on that, because I believe that unless we see a significant pattern where people who have their IDs, their citizenship, are being treated as if they're not citizens, if they are verifiably citizens and they're not being treated as such, I don't want to hear one more supposedly legal citizen who's a friend of mine posting some super scaredy cat Instagram story on Instagram and Comic Sans. ICE spotted in my local neighborhood. Watch out. Watch out for what? If the proof's in the pudding that you're in danger when the Border Patrol is simply trying to search for people who truly are illegals, I don't want to hear one more spit or spatter or fucking... I don't want to hear no more peeps. I don't want to hear a single peep from anybody unless I see a list of sources. Now, I've seen many sources about people being mistreated, and each time it has either been someone who was verifiably not legal or someone who was legal. There was a guy about, I believe, 2.5 months ago, and he started a fight with the Border Patrol crossing people, which is impeding their job. It happens often. This has been a thing recently as body cam footage has become a lot more popular ever since the George Floyd incident. There has been legislation that has been making it necessary for police in certain districts to use body cams to record absolutely everything. And what has become exposed, aside from many cops not acting very dutifully, but what has been exposed further is how people are just so not self-aware. When they're confronted with law enforcement, I call it... LEA. It's called law enforcement anxiety. And when this happens, a very high quantity of people will end up provoking the police and later on absolutely insisting when in the jail cell or in the police car on the way to the jail cell that they never provoked anyone in the first place. The lack of self-awareness, particularly if you're getting into regular scrapes physically or verbally with the police. There's a lot to talk about here. A very big, nuanced subject. I've been looking at so many sources for this, and I am sure these instances of citizens getting deported exist. I've yet to see any, if enough, to justify that there is a pattern happening here. Moses says, ironically, last stream we were talking about how you and Enoch had seemingly disappeared. Oh yeah, it's interesting. You guys were absent last time. You came in this time. Would you like to share your take?
Yes, I've sent you many URLs on citizens, people that were either peacefully protesting or else citizens that were just being arrested, and they were arrested just based on what they looked like. It's happening. It's happening a lot in LA. And I think that to talk about patterns, do we wait until we see a pattern, or do we act on when it happens to at least one person, because it shouldn't happen. People shouldn't be treated in that way.
Yeah, so a couple things there. I think when it comes to the peaceful protesting thing or arrested because of the color of their skin, I'm very curious as to how one would prove that. When it comes to the idea of peaceful protest, there are a lot of people who, in these LA riots, have not been calling it riots. They have been calling it peaceful protesting. Maybe they, as individuals, whilst cars were burning in the background, were just kind of waving a sign around and yelling something totally well-spirited on a megaphone. Maybe. But a lot of the times, whenever I see in either body cam footage posted by citizens or the precincts, there are many instances where a policeman is in a high-octane situation, he gets stressed, he makes a bad decision. That seems like an individual issue. However, if there's anything close to a pattern, I would say that there are a lot of people. There was a lot of footage during the Gaza protests that, where students would protest on the behalf of people in a different nation who were experiencing something that no one in America even understood fully, at least when it came to personal experience. And there were a lot of people peacefully protesting the Gaza shit. They kept insisting, this is the peaceful protest, while they were breaking windows, breaking and entering a school campus they weren't supposed to enter. So to me, whenever someone tells me that a protest is peaceful, I don't buy it. I am not denying that there are definitely individual instances. However, when we're looking at patterns, I'm looking at people who are trying to basically, it's not fun, by the way. It's not fun having ICE in your local neighborhood. It can be stressful. But if I can see particular instances outside of peaceful protests or people who were later exposed to be illegals, people who were legally here, who are getting either if it was a mistake and they were let back in, or if it was a mistake and then they were like, no, you're gone anyways. If that's happened, I've looked through the sources you've sent me and I haven't seen any stories of that.
I want to let you know that there are many people who are not yet citizens, but are part of the immigration process that started way before Trump became president. So because they're part of the immigration process, that is not looked at. They are being arrested and deported.
Okay, so
regardless of if they have an ongoing immigration process to become legal, they are just deported.
So you're telling me they arrested someone because they didn't have their papers, later found out that they were...
Regardless, they aren't even checking that. That's why they're arresting people that just look like they may be from, not white or Latino or whatever. They are doing that. It is... And also,
interesting. The process
involving peaceful protests, I want to mention that there are many people that attend these peaceful protests. However, if we end up having just a few people that are not peaceful, that labels that peaceful protest as an unpeaceful protest. So it only takes one person to be unpeaceful to make the peaceful protest unpeaceful.
Well, that's why MLK had a very strict rule. All right, we don't want you in our group if you're going to be violent. Let's protest the message. Well, wait, hold on.
Okay.
So that's why the people organizing these protests, and I have seen, there are people at my local schools, there are people who I follow, unfortunately, who I see organizing these things. They're putting out flyers. And you met one of the people who is a part of a political advocacy thing, came into our house. And whenever they're doing it, I believe they have the responsibility to emphasize the same thing that MLK did. I think when it comes to protests that go well, it's a double-edged sword. If you don't organize a protest like this, it causes more harm. If you do it the correct way, yes. Protests are a very risky business to dip your feet into. You have to emphasize the peaceful aspect of it. And it's so funny that I know people debate the tweet chronology. However, Trump, during the January 6th crap, which was very haphazard and irresponsible, he emphasized peace more than any of these supposed protesters are. Any of these people organizing these protests. Raise your fists and protest against Gaza or being destroyed. Raise your fists and protest against ICE parking in our neighborhood. Supposedly seeing a pattern. I'm not seeing it. I think it's fine if you want to, protest how uncomfortable it is for ICE to be there. But if you don't want for that slippery slope for those couple individuals to slip in, you got to do what MLK did, and you got to emphasize the peace. And I'm not seeing anybody doing that. And I've seen plenty of posters.
I think there are many people who are doing that. That is the emphasis of making progress in having a voice.
Mrs. G Triple G says, I mean, even if they're passively aggressive, that's still not peaceful, and I feel like almost all of them I see are passively aggressive. That is an interesting distinction. There is a difference between throwing tear gas bombs, and going, yeah, no, they suck, so we're going to teach them a lesson, wave our signs. They're not roundhouse kicking anybody. But there is a difference between the attitude, which definitely, if you're being passive aggressive in cadence in a protest versus... I mean, I've seen the movies, but I've also seen the real footage. They were holding hands in 1967 and 1968. They were simply dining. They weren't being malicious. They weren't showing feelings of malice towards other people, for the most part. Maybe a couple individuals gave the snarky side eye here and there. But during MLK's protest, which I will keep using as a really, really great reference point, there was no passive-aggressive attitude. They were consistent. The attitudes they were showing, it's significant, and it was different. Now, I'm interested in seeing some sources for this. I would love to read them out loud. It'll be like a story time.
Was there any violence during MLK protests?
There definitely was, from one side in particular.
So, that is, so, yeah, when do we draw the line at if it is violent, passive-aggressive to the point of provoking either side? Military or police officer or just person who is non-military, just someone who lives there. Maybe even an immigrant. And is that okay?
Wait, what's the question you're asking?
Is it okay? Where does the line get drawn? Where does the line get drawn of does it have to be violent, or is there as some person had mentioned, passive aggressive? When is that? Is it okay to be passive aggressive? Well, if it's provoking, it will test the other person, as in how far do they go. However, I do think that violence is definitely it makes it, of course, not peaceful. So it's not okay. And to all that other stuff that can provoke it can be a problem. Anyway, I don't want to keep...
No. This is you're adding a lot to the conversation. Yeah, I mean, okay, so I would say that from a lot of the footage that I've seen, from a lot of the reports being made, the LA riots are marked more by violence than anything else. There's a general message, and I'm seeing... Here, let me see. Was there any violence? Yes, violence occurred. Some protests did experience violence. Protests experienced violence. By the way, this is Gemini AI, and it says Gemini AI is experimental.
I'm showing you just...
King strongly believed in nonviolent resistance as the most effective way to achieve social change. He saw violence as a destructive force that could undermine the movement's goals and create a cycle of negativity. In his 1965 debate with Malcolm X insisted that violence was a necessary means if placed under self-defense or if a certain group felt threatened. Martin Luther King said that is not the way. I have maintained this position for years that if Malcolm X was the one leading these same protests, we would end up in a big shit sandwich, and I don't think anything would get done. Despite King's advocacy, some protests did experience violence. This violence often came from law enforcement or white counter-protesters who attacked peaceful demonstrators. There's a link for this. Yeah, there was a whole thing. I mean, these protests involved hundreds of people. I don't see any sources for this, but I'm sure I would have trouble, especially because it's such a high-intensity issue at the time. A couple people would slip into the cracks that would, throw a punch or two self-defensively at the police. But King's message, not just to the people working with him, but the whole world, is we are nonviolent. We mean no harm. We are here to hold hands and spread a message rather than dress up in ski masks, wave a flag around, and shout at police officers and throw shit at them and set police cars on fire.
Yeah, so that did happen after the military came in. And the military did not have to come in.
Very interesting. Is there a source for that? Because I'd like to see that. Because who set the police cars on fire?
The people that were protesting because they did not like the military to be part of this, intimidation.
Why did the military show up? Were the
Because Trump had ordered the military into the state of California without the governor's consent. And normally the governor has to consent to that. Although Trump decided to go above the governor, which is not a normal thing, saying that it was a problem.
Oh yeah, Gavin Newsom's little feud with Trump.
Which there was, it depended on what the governor wanted, and then that's when escalations occurred.
In Gavin Newsom's particular position, what Gavin Newsom wants, to me, it does not spell out any values or principles relative to the situation. But, I mean, if Trump had that power, I mean, there are definitely many instances of Trump not using his power 100%. Let me look at chat here. This McBurgerness, this might be a dumb question, but I get it's protected. But what is the purpose of protest? I like the straight question. I like how you just cut to the chase. Or the starvation protest. Now it's about sign that is almost rude. IRL chat room so people can be heard. Nonviolence is necessary in my opinion. Thank you.
Yes.
I think the only protests that didn't muddy the waters and actually achieved something, especially legislatively, a lot of protests aren't just aiming to shout into the darkness. They want governmental change. A lot of governmental issues, that's what starts these protests. What's the solution to a governmental issue? Legislation within the government, a law being enacted that would solve the problem. So, I feel like if we want for the lawmakers who are greatly influenced by public opinion, what the American public sees and consequently what they think, when Martin Luther King in the debate against Malcolm X said you have to paint a picture, I agree, and the American public decides whether or not the picture you paint is accurate. But a great way to confuse people is if you see one side full of mostly blacks throwing shit at another side full of mostly whites also throwing shit. So, it might sound superficial, but when MLK said paint a picture, I do agree. And you got to represent the situation truthfully, None of the protests, I haven't seen, I'm sure there have been a couple. All right, let me see. Impact of military deployment. All right, let's read this out loud and let's interpret this as we go along. Also, we have about 3 to 4 pieces left, not including the one in my mouth. Some reports indicate an increase in tensions and clashes between protesters and law enforcement after the National Guard was called in. We should have another AI question. Why was the National Guard called in? From what I've heard, they were called in because the protesters began protesting. The trumpet...
Not violently. Not necessarily violently.
Non-violently.
Well, I mean, there are always going to be a few here and there, but not to the point of having a National Guard.
Especially in LA, when I hear people say, fight to the death over your rights. Fight to the death over ICE.
The LAPD was saying they had it under control. Even without the consent of the LAPD and the governor of California, the National Guard was still called in because Trump.
How long did these
political
how long? Because I'm just thinking about the feasibility of this. How long were these protesters out? How long did these riots last for?
I don't have a number. I mean, you could potentially, and then then they eventually had to do curfews because people were getting angry. It's true, and of course, no. Does that mean that they should be violent? No. I guess that doesn't mean they should be violent. Although people do overstep boundaries that they shouldn't.
Yeah. Well, here, no. I mean, what it says here, to your credit, it says the Trump administration's decision to deploy troops without a formal request from the state of California has been criticized by local officials as potentially escalating the situation. You see? Well, I mean, that's the AI overview, but that is very likely true. And Gavin Newsom's statement is, let them protest. There have been, especially in past protests at the beginning of this decade, if any of you remember, I'm sure most of you are above 5 years old, there was a lot of small businesses getting destroyed because of supposedly peaceful protests that BLM initiated. There was no police damage from the police when it came to these businesses being destroyed. You can find story after story of, specifically in these black areas, black business owners having their businesses destroyed. And Gavin Newsom very famously had no statement on it. He didn't care. He didn't give a shit. And not that this is what Trump was thinking about, because when it comes to my principles and Trump's principles, I think I would highly disagree with Trump if I knew why he did the things he did. It's just that coincidentally, I find the outcome of Trump's decisions to be quite form-fitting, because Gavin Newsom's proven past apathy towards small businesses getting destroyed, the casualties from these peaceful protests. I have heard about protests that have been literally described as peaceful, and then all you do is look into it, and you hear about retired police deputies who had dealt with blunt force trauma on the head, were killed on the spot by these protesters from this movement. Okay, they were bad apples, sure. So why are people abandoning that argument when it comes to the other side with police precincts? Isn't that interesting? Wouldn't your brain conditioning relative to being part of a protest on hating the police also be a relevant argument when it comes to, say, the police being trained by their precincts to hate blacks, when really they're being cautioned rationally to watch out for the group of people most likely to attack and kill them? So that's some food for thought, a nice big burger of thought right there to chomp down. Politicians have a lobby of people who tell them what they think. Yeah. Also, Gavin Newsom is notoriously, he's like the Bob Iger of American government. Like, nothing he does or says, I believe, actually comes from his mouth. I cannot believe he agreed, and I don't like Charlie Kirk. If you guys remember, there was a stream where I made fun of how big his forehead was and how he looks like Dudley because his eyes are close together. But why did he agree to, like, go on Charlie Kirk's video broadcasting stream thing or whatever the hell it was? All right, it was one of the most insane. And they were having just this, like, at points down to earth conversation. It shocked me, but it was insane how little Newsom knew about anything politically. Like, for reference, he knows words, he knows some stats, he has less principles than most people do, but when it comes to just bare, raw knowledge, as a politician, he knows about as much as, like, me 4 years ago, which is really embarrassing. So, I don't know. It's hard because both sides think they're correct, and subjectively you can look at it on both sides and agree with both sides if you're subject enough. Sure, right? There's a big thing about, okay, well, these all come down to principles. I believe that nothing can get done unless people stop hurling rocks at each other. So if we believe in that, then also we should just agree that throwing rocks is bad. But then there are people who just straight up don't believe in that. And when it comes to these statements, I believe that there are universal truths, but the road to either proving or falsifying these ideas that we have ideologically, you know, maybe there's some case out there about people throwing rocks and it changed everything. I'm sure. The French Revolution, maybe. Even though I don't believe that these situations are at all comparable. But all I'm saying is, I need to see some sources, and I'm actually looking through my text right now to see if my mom sent me anything, because she sends me these sources. Okay, no. But every time something has happened involving ICE, it has been with a person who is illegally here, or someone who was legally here but literally started a fight with them as they were simply trying to conduct a search in which they likely would not have been in trouble in the first place. So anybody protesting ICE being here, they're in your local neighborhood. Watch out. Watch out. Watch out for kicking them in the balls or something like that. Unless an explicit act of violence is committed, you don't need to worry.
Can I borrow your phone? I need to...
You need to... this is where the chat is. There's some people in the chat.
It'll be real quick. I'm just unlocking the
Oh, yeah, okay. Or you're saying... Wait, why do you want to unlock? You want to just drive it?
No, because I just moved the plug over from...
Oh, yeah, here, take it. Wait, hold on. Can't fight fire with a bigger fire. It's going to get even bigger. I met a senator in high school and he was doing a job. Okay, yeah, go ahead. But that's my point, all right? Now, I'm sure maybe the proof exists and I got to see it. But until I see it, I ain't going to fucking believe it, man. I'm not going to believe just based on presumption. And people are like, wait, this is just like a movie, dude. We're like characters in a Pixar movie. We're like the ragtag team of racially diverse misfits, and the evil government bad guys are coming down. You guys aren't in a Pixar movie, all right? Y'all ain't the protagonists. When the evil government guys come down, they're not here to fuck you up, all right? To assume the government is just evil by default and ICE is coming to get you, they're coming to get the people who aren't citizens, who came here illegally. You don't get citizenship privileges if you're not a citizen. As simple as that. It's crazy how people just don't get this through their head. Anyways, we're going to eat 2 more pieces, and that is my statement for the day. Fire can fight fire. Just because you can fight doesn't mean you're going to win. There are certain instances where if someone tries to drop kick you, you can just drop kick them back, and there's that. Also, interestingly enough, we're talking about different chemicals here. It's different ballparks. If we're talking about people listening to you, which will result in actual governmental changes, that's the situation where fire can't fight fire. The vast majority of shootings that a lot of people on the left use as ammunition, sorry about the unintentional pun, I promise that wasn't planned, but a lot of the shootings people talk about, most of those shootings, if not all of them, with the exception of suicide by gun, were stopped by people with guns, either law enforcement apprehending them with a gun, or a good Samaritan of some sort coming in with a gun and shooting them dead, or holding them up. Also, the vast majority of these instances where people are hurt with gun violence, a lot of them happen, the vast majority of them, part of my language, the vast majority, you can look this up, they happen in places where guns are banned. All right, simple logic here. If you ban guns and people can't legally acquire them, who's left to acquire them? The people who will illegally get them. But, well, you know what I mean. Yeah. No, it's fine. It's fine if you're not good at spelling. I just woke up from a nap, and when that happens, it's like my own brain version of autocorrect just isn't there. So it's like just random syllables that aren't supposed to be there just like don't get filtered through, or they're not filtered. So they just go right on through, and you just hear random bullshit. Also, I stutter more than usual, but I owe sleep debt. Also, we forgot to do the score of the day. I'm feeling post-nap euphoria, which has been very hard to come by because naps have been hard to come by. Sleep has been hard to come by in general. Also, I'm glad I was able to do the stream. This only happened because Myra motivated me, and on top of all that, another person who helped me was my mom, who contributed to the stream through an exchange of positions and opinions, which I think we need more of today. This is what the talking hole was supposed to be if Randy actually would follow through with his SDSU shit. We would only get an hour and a half, and an hour and 20 minutes of that hour and a half would be spent fucking around on a computer trying to get the stream started. I don't care how cool the green screen looks. It ain't worth it. But I'm going to go with a 7.6. I'm going to kill that animal, I swear. A 7.6 out of 10. How about this, Mom? I'm going to eat the last couple pieces. I'm going to end early, and I can walk the dogs with you.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thanks, Myra. What do you mean, thanks, Myra? Where is she? I don't see her. Pet the dog. You want me to pet the dog? Bro's really going to pet the dog right now. All right. I'm petting the dog. Never done this before. All right. Now I have a bunch of dog microbes on my hand. All right, I'll meet you outside, Mom. This means that very unexpectedly we're going to have to end the stream here. I know we got very much into rambling, also because when my mom is right there and she was just standing there and talking with me and having a nice conversation. Also, if any of you have any sources of people who are legal citizens getting detained and people, it being an actual pattern as of recent, say this executive order and this move on Trump's part was unusually haphazard so that many citizens are getting detained and the government doesn't care, or there's no effort to rehabilitate them or to put them back. If that's happening, if there's any proof of it, the proof of which I've never fucking seen, ever, then feel free to send it to me because I'd love to evaluate it. But I haven't seen it. Why can't you stream at home? I am, right now. I mean, okay, this is my temporary home that I'm kind of residing in while the government figures out another place for me to do my research. But for all intents and purposes, this is my home. We even made it look like an exact replica of my home. We even 3D printed those replica pictures of my childhood or whatever. So you don't need professional equipment for Talking Hole, the informal style of the stream mix and Warner. Exactly. Which is why I agreed to do this here. Also, we're basically gonna have this is the Talking Hole, just without Randy there sitting, going, actually, black culture is important. I'm like, but the thing with this stream is that I want to turn it into more of a talking hole thing. We're going to have people calling in. It's going to be just like the online interaction chamber from way back when, if any of you remember. So I intend on doing that. And once we reach day 1000, we will experience a revamp of that type of stream. It's no longer a mukbang or whatever you call it. It's going to be specifically talking, listening, and also on your part, and typing and listening. That's what you guys are doing. My mom is trying to house the stray cat that's intruding our home, and our cats probably despise what's happening. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I mean, yeah, it's very pro-cat empathy, which is nice. Hey, your mom is not establishing borders, but that's okay, because your house is not a nation. But hopefully it doesn't, track any diseases in or anything like that, Stray cats are more likely to have diseases, so just make sure you don't get cat AIDS and have your dick fall off. Oh, wait, you're a lady. Have your nipples fall off. That would be bad. Let's go call Brienne live day 1. Yes, let's go. That's a good name. Let's go call Brienne. That'll hook onto the algorithm for sure. I mean, I get surprised on the stuff that I post that, like, the algorithm is nice to. I really do get surprised by that. All right, 2 pieces left, everybody. Sorry that it was, like, it came in so strong and I'm leaving so quick, but I went to accompany my mother. Yeah, I mean, listen, I could have brought it up way sooner, but, like, it's becoming unignorable at this point. I mean, some of you aren't even on Instagram, but you're hearing about it. You're hearing people talk about it. These anti-ICE protests, the LA riots, we're not even going to call them protests no more. They morphed. They metastasized into riots. It's like bacteria turning into mold. So, like, it's so bad. And I'm not hearing anyone actually say, like, listen, unless we see proof of it, and there's a high probability that agents of the government, the legislative branch, can fuck up and screw over citizens. But I mean, the more I see it, I'm like, what do they mean by legal citizens? I'm not seeing proof of this anywhere. If by citizens they mean people who are not citizens, then you just wish they were citizens because you want for this country to have no borders and people to just walk in, Going right now? Okay, wait, this is the last piece. Again, I am seeing very loose... Wait, fuck. I am seeing very loose proof for these claims and very loose definitions of what citizen means. If you're going to consider these people who are being detained citizens, because legally they're not. Go outside, your mom's waiting. I know, I'm trying to move the text out of the way of the burning car, my decoration. And this whole... Hold on. There we go. Get out of here. All right. Thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow. That'll be day 721. Make sure to live, laugh, cry, and also not die. And until next time, this is goodbye. Goodbye. 0.0. Your day should get better. I am so sorry. God bless you. All right. Stop streaming. 3, 2...